I've been nervous since the first time I saw you. You got a remedy, doctor?
Take 2 aspirin and go to bed.
What I like about being an actor is what has turned out to be what I've devoted my life to, which is learning how to connect to the other person.
If it bends, it's funny. If it breaks, it's not funny.
If you demand expressions of religious faith from politicians, you are just begging to be lied to.
It's very hard to act with a lamppost. And if you don't have a partner who's willing to share the experience with you, to get connected to you, it's really difficult to play with them. And they might have spent days or weeks pumping themselves up, getting full of what they feel is the emotion and the state of mind of their character. But if they're not willing to make connection with me as the character, and I have to make believe I'm talking to a real person.
You want to go to war with me?
It isn't me, Howard. It's the United States government. We just beat Germany and Japan. Who the hell are you?
To be committed to something, it really sometimes just means that most of your brain is working on this moment. We can get by with thinking of our laundry list. Where am I going to dinner after the show? I forgot that appointment I have tomorrow, I better take. And you're saying lines while you're, so that's not a good idea. I think commitment happens, and people say the person is committed to the part, when they've really allowed themselves to get in contact with what's happening in them and what's happening in you. And then you're swimming together, you're dancing together, and there's nothing more fun than that, and it's fun to watch. If you go to a wedding and people get up to dance, and some guy's going like this, in time to the music, not dancing, he's not dancing with anybody, it's not interesting. When you see two kids and they're both connected, they're flying together like a bunch of geese, that's fun to watch.
Looking at you while troubles are fleeing, I'm admiring the view, 'cause it's you I'm seeing and the sweet honeydew.
When I was younger, I used to be directing myself the whole time I was acting. And I'd be saying, good, not good, no good, no, stop. And now I don't do that. Now I just rely on the connection I make to the other person. If I can't remember what I'm saying, I notice that. But otherwise, I don't judge it. I let it be what it is. And I let the director tell me if it's good enough. Because there are certain things that happen that you can't notice that are really worth keeping in, that are just spontaneous little moments that make it seem more engaging. I can't judge those. I don't know whether they're happening or not. But if I'm connected, I think it's probably happening. And that contributes to what I think is unique to acting, which is there's a kind of ecstasy in it. You start doing it and you get, time goes by. I guess it must be like other art, making a painting or a sculpture. Time just goes by, I think.
We have liver or fish?
I didn't hear you say that. Because it isn't possible. It's inhuman to serve the same food day after day. The Geneva Convention prohibits the killing of our taste buds.
Easy.
I simply cannot eat the same food every day. Fish, liver, day after day. I've eaten a river of liver and an ocean of fish.
When I think about MASH, I think about the people. I don't think about things that happen on camera most of the time, or things I wrote, or things that I directed. A long time ago, if I happened to be changing channels and I saw a scene from MASH, I'd watch it for a half a minute or so. I'd think, I remember this story. Now I can't remember the story. Now I can't tell the ones I wrote from the ones I didn't. So it's in the past for me, and I love it and I'm proud of it. What I took with me mostly was the memories of the people who I love. What I also took with me is how it changed me, how it made me a better actor, or a better director, a better writer. You know, we started shooting it 46 years ago.
And as for my ability as a doctor, if you seriously question that, I'm afraid I'll just have to challenge you to a duel.
Swords or pistols? I was thinking of specimen bottles at 20 paces.
We never knew it would become what it was in terms of its popularity. Right up till the end, we were shocked when we drove through the streets the night the final episode was airing, and there were no cars on the streets. We had no idea that half the country would be watching it at the same time. But in the beginning, we knew it was good, but it wasn't catching on with the audience. For the first year, we were at the bottom of the ratings list. So I used to tell people we're in the top 78.
All right, Gerald, I believe I have Charlie.
Who put water in my gun?
How do you know it's water?
We all knew it was something bigger than all of us. We were doing something really unusual. It was a comedy, but it wasn't a stupid comedy. It wasn't only a comedy, it was also dramatic, it was satirical, it was in every form you could imagine. But it was always about real people who had lived through a horrendous experience, and we respected that. It was the only service comedy that I know of where you saw wounded people. So we didn't know if it would last. I thought when I read the script, gee, I can't do this because it's liable to run a year. It's so good.
Do you think you're conservative enough to get the Republican nomination?
I think I'm Republican enough. I'm a lifelong Republican.
I had played murderers, rapists, robbers many times. And then the question I would get after I did West Wing was it hard to play a Republican? I would say, if I could play a murderer, I could certainly play a Republican, which wasn't taken too well by some Republicans. But I meant it sincerely. We're all just people. All they had said to me before I did it was, you want to run for president on the West Wing? And I said, sure. But, it's a commitment. You don't know if it's going to work out. But I knew they were coming up with good stuff. And in fact, just personally, I felt I learned a lot about national politics by being on the show. Because the people who wrote the show, Lawrence O'Donnell, for instance, had much more experience in politics, in real politics, than most shows have about any subject. So it was an education to do that. I learned about political campaigns in Kansas and then the special considerations about a campaign there, for instance. It's a very interesting experience for me. That was especially true in the live debate we did, which was one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had as an actor.
Are you saying that you're opposed to debt relief for impoverished countries?
No, we should forgive the debts, but that's not going to help those countries very much.
Okay. What will?
Tax cuts.
We were on live for an hour. We did two versions, one for the East Coast and one for the West Coast. I forget what the middle of the country got, maybe the first show. There was not any time to learn it because they kept rewriting it up until the last minute. So the whole show was on monitors, and we had to half know it and half get it off the prompter. So it gave it a sense of life and improv that was very exciting, and I think looked really good. It was interesting doing it for two audiences because the second audience was completely different from the first audience. They came from the same community. They were both in California. The second audience thought it was a Democratic rally, and every time Jimmy Smith said something, they cheered him. At one point I said, well, I got something really good to say here. I told them to be quiet. Clear and Vivid is the name of the podcast that I do because it keeps coming up when we train people to communicate better. We want them to be clear and vivid means engaging, talking about things that you're interested in, and clarity the same thing. And I have this wonderful chance on the podcast to have conversations with people that I might not otherwise have conversations with if it weren't for the podcast. And they're fascinating people. Isn't it interesting how much a story captures our imagination and gets us to listen and gets us to learn from what is being said, so much more than a pile of data. I only have 20 or 30 years left to live. Everybody's looking at one another around. Is he kidding? Does he think he has 30 years to live? But I want to have fun during that time, like I've had fun for the last 30 or 40 years. And I don't know what that's going to be. I don't have plans. I don't have, there's nothing I'm missing doing. If I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. I don't worry about it. I never made plans. My life has been like an improvisation. And that's worked out okay.